On a foggy, desolate highway, a trucker pulls over to help a young woman in a tattered wedding dress stranded in the cold. What he doesn't know is that this simple act of kindness will set in motion a chain of events that will change both their lives forever. She's running from more than just a broken wedding. She's running from a past that almost destroyed her. Can a stranger's compassion truly heal the deepest wounds, or will the road ahead only lead to more heartbreak? If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The fog hung thick in the air like a veil, wrapping the world in a haze that made everything appear distant and unclear. The highway stretched out before Luke Matthews, a trucker who had seen his fair share of long, lonely nights behind the wheel. His semi-truck roared steadily down the wet asphalt, the tires humming against the road as the windshield wipers beat a regular rhythm, pushing the drizzle away. It was another late-night haul, another endless drive that seemed to blur into the car. Next, with nothing but the monotony of the road to keep him company, the truck's cab smelled faintly of stale coffee, and the soft glow of the dashboard lights cast a warm, comforting light against the otherwise dark and dreary night. Luke's eyes were heavy with fatigue, but he pressed on, accustomed to the isolation of the road. He had driven these same routes countless times before, each night merging into the next, but tonight felt different. The mist curled around the truck like ghostly fingers, and as Luke looked out through the windshield, his gaze was drawn to something unusual. Up ahead, a figure stood at the edge of the road, barely visible through the thick fog. It was a woman standing alone in the dark, her figure almost blending into the shadows. Luke squinted, trying to make out her features, but it was hard to see anything clearly in the fog. His first instinct was to keep driving. There were stories, too many stories, about people stranded on the side of the road, waiting for a car to pull over so they could rob or trick the driver. The cold, pragmatic part of his mind told him to just keep going, but something about this woman made him hesitate. There was no movement from her. She didn't wave or signal for help. She simply stood there, her posture slumped, her head low, as though she was weighed down by some unseen burden. Luke's gut tightened. He didn't know why, but he felt a tug in his chest. He slowed the truck, easing off the gas pedal and guiding it toward the shoulder. The tires skidded slightly on the wet road as he pulled over, the sound of the truck slowing echoing in the quiet night. The woman didn't move, didn't even look up. It was as though she didn't even notice him stopping. He climbed out of the truck, his boots crunching on the gravel as he approached her. His heart pounded a little harder now, unsure of what he would find. He took a cautious step forward, holding his palms out, trying to make himself as non-threatening as possible. "Hey, are you okay, miss?" he called gently, his voice carrying through the mist. She flinched at the sound but didn't run. Luke could see her more clearly now, and what he saw made his chest tighten even more. She was young, probably in her 20s, but her clothes were torn, her white dress stained and tattered, as though she had been through something horrific. Her bare feet were caked with mud, her legs scratched from the long walk. Her face was pale, and her long black hair hung in damp strands over her face. She didn't say a word, but there was a shiver that ran through her body, an involuntary tremor that made Luke's heart ache. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her eyes vacant and empty. She looked like someone who had been through something unimaginable. "Do you need help?" Luke asked, his voice softer this time, trying not to startle her. His gut told him that something was terribly wrong, and he knew he couldn't just leave her out here on the side of the road. For a moment, she didn't respond. She only looked up slowly, her eyes wide but distant, as if she had seen too much for someone so young. Her mouth opened, but no words came out, just a faint, broken breath. Luke didn't know what to say, but something in her eyes made him feel like he couldn't just walk away. Her head dipped, and she nodded slowly, the motion small, as if the simple act of acknowledging him took all of her remaining strength. Luke sighed, stepping closer and shrugging off his flannel jacket. He draped it over her trembling shoulders, noticing how thin she felt under the fabric. The girl clutched the jacket tightly to her body, the warmth of it seeming to offer some small comfort against the cold night. "You can ride with me," Luke said gently. "Let's get you somewhere warm." He helped her into the truck, guiding her carefully into the passenger seat. She didn't speak, but she looked at him with gratitude in her eyes. And that was enough. Luke bundled her in a few blankets that he kept in the back of the cab, his movements gentle as he tried to comfort her in the only way he knew how. For the next few miles, the truck moved quietly through the fog. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the rain tapping softly against the windshield. Luke didn't press her for answers. He could tell she was exhausted, physically and emotionally, and he didn't want to push her too far. They drove in silence, the only company being the storm outside and the occasional flicker of the headlights on the darkened road. It wasn't until they passed a small gas station that the girl finally spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper, as though it took every ounce of her energy just to speak. "My name's Sophia," she said, her voice brittle, like the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Luke glanced at her, surprised. "I'm Luke," he replied with a small smile. "Nice to meet you, Sophia." She tried to smile back, but it was weak, fragile. It was clear that she was a long way from healing, from finding peace. But there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something that told him she wasn't beyond saving. Maybe this was the start of something better for her. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step in a journey toward healing. The truck rolled steadily through the night, the rhythmic hum of the engine the only sound in the cab. Sophia sat beside Luke, curled tightly in the blankets he had given her, her small frame barely visible beneath the layers. The quiet tension between them hung in the air, and for a while neither spoke. Luke wasn't sure what to say. She had been through so much, and in his heart, he knew that no words could fix what was broken. Sometimes, silence was all that was needed. Outside the truck, the rain had slowed to a mist, the kind of damp fog that clung to the skin and made everything feel colder. The world seemed still, suspended in the wetness of the night. Luke glanced at her occasionally, his gaze soft, trying not to invade the space she clearly wanted to keep to herself. Her eyes were closed, but the faint tremble of her shoulders revealed how tightly she was wound, like a coil ready to snap. As the miles passed, the tension slowly began to loosen, and it was Sophia who spoke first, breaking the silence that had lingered in the cab for what felt like an eternity. Her voice was soft, cracked like the sound of glass shattering. "Thank you," she whispered, barely loud enough for Luke to hear. Luke's grip tightened on the wheel, though his gaze never left. "The road. You don't have to thank me," he said simply. "I'm just doing what anyone would do." Sophia turned her head slightly, her eyes still empty, like a clouded sky. "Most people don't stop," she said quietly. "They just keep driving." Luke understood what she meant. People saw the world through different lenses, and some lenses were clouded with fear, indifference, or just the weight of their own problems. But he wasn't like those people. He had learned over years of long hauls and quiet nights that kindness was the only thing that made the road a little less lonely. Sophia shifted in her seat, her movements slow, like each motion required careful thought. She was still clutching Luke's jacket around her body, its warmth doing little to fight the cold that seemed to settle deep inside her. "My wedding was today," she said, her voice soft as if the words were too painful to say out loud. Luke glanced at her again, his heart tightening with an instinctive understanding. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to," he said gently, his voice low, encouraging. Sophia's eyes flickered toward the window, her gaze distant. "I ran," she whispered, as though saying it aloud made it more real. "I ran right out of that church and never looked back. My shoes got stuck in the mud, but I didn't stop. I couldn't." Luke's heart went out to her, and for a brief moment he was reminded of all the people he had met along the way, those he had helped in small, fleeting moments, and those who had shared their stories with him in the silence of the night. But Sophia's story was different. It was raw, painful, and it echoed a depth of betrayal that Luke could never fully understand. He had never been left at the altar, never had someone he trusted tear apart his sense of self-worth. But in that moment he felt the weight of her pain as if it were his own. "I'm so sorry," Luke said, his voice steady. That's beyond cruel. No one should have to feel that way." Sophia didn't answer right away. Her eyes were focused on the blurred lights outside the truck window, the streetlights glimmering like faded stars. A tear finally slipped down her cheek and she didn't bother to wipe it away. Her face, though bruised by the hardship of her past, had a certain quiet beauty to it, a kind of softness that had been buried beneath the pain. "He said I wasn't good enough," she continued, her voice breaking with each word. "He told everyone I wasn't worth marrying. He humiliated me in front of my friends, my family. He laughed with his friends about how long I would last before begging him to come back." Luke clenched his fists on the steering wheel, fury rising in his chest. The injustice of it, the cruelty in her words, twisted something deep inside him. "What kind of man does that?" he muttered, unable to keep the anger from his voice. Sophia let out a hollow laugh, a sound that was more bitter than anything resembling humor. "The kind of man who knows how to break someone, I guess." The words hung in the air, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Luke knew that no matter how much he wanted to protect her, no words could heal the wounds she carried. The best he could do was be there, to offer her a ride, warmth, and perhaps, if she would let him, an opportunity to begin again. Eventually, the truck began to slow as they approached a small rest stop on the side of the road. The diner up ahead was glowing with warmth, a stark contrast to the cold, damp night. The neon lights buzzed faintly, a sign of life in the otherwise empty stretch of highway. "Let's stop here for a bit," Luke suggested, pulling the truck into the parking lot. He killed the engine and turned to her. "You need anything?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, her eyes downcast. And then finally, she shook her head. "I'm okay," she murmured, though Luke could tell she wasn't. Her entire demeanor was one of weariness, as if the weight of the world had taken its toll on her. "You know," Luke said softly, "there's no shame in needing help. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." She looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time since she had climbed into the truck. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something fragile, but undeniably present. A spark of recognition, maybe. A glimpse of trust. "I don't know what to do," she said quietly. "Everything feels wrong, like I'm not even real anymore." Luke reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder, offering a comforting squeeze. "You're real," he said, his voice firm, yet gentle. "You're not alone. You can start again. But it takes time. Don't rush it. Just take it one step at a time." She nodded slowly, the hint of a tear glistening in her eye, though she didn't allow it to fall. For the first time that night, there was a glimmer of something hopeful in her expression, something that made her seem less lost and more human again. The road ahead was still uncertain for her, but in that moment, she wasn't alone. The morning came slowly, breaking through the mist like a quiet promise. The sky was still overcast, the rain now reduced to a light drizzle that left the world glistening like a fresh canvas, awaiting new colors. Luke woke up early, before the sun had fully claimed the sky and stretched his stiff limbs. He glanced over at Sophia, who was still asleep in the passenger seat, curled under the blankets he had given her the night before. Her breathing was steady, deep, and peaceful for the first time since they had met. The soft hum of the truck's engine filled the air as Luke prepared his breakfast. He hadn't said much since they had stopped at the diner the previous night. They had eaten their meals in silence, neither of them eager to share more than what was necessary. But Luke knew that today was going to be different. He could feel it deep inside. Sophia was no longer the broken girl he had met on the side of the road. No, she had begun to show signs of something more. A flicker of hope. A spark of life. Sophia stirred and slowly opened her eyes, blinking against the soft light that was filtering in through the truck window. She sat up slowly, the motion hesitant as though she was unsure of where she was. But when she saw Luke, The first thing she did was smile, albeit a small one. It was a smile that didn't try to hide the sadness in her eyes, but it was there. Nonetheless, a reminder that things could change even if only a little at a time. "Morning," Luke greeted, his voice warm but still steady. He handed her a bottle of water and a couple of crackers, which she accepted with a silent nod. She hadn't said much since they'd started driving again, but there was something about the quiet that seemed to make her feel safe. Maybe it was the comfort of the truck's familiar hum or the gentle rhythm of the wheels beneath them, but Sophia didn't seem so fragile now. She wasn't the same girl who had stood by the road, drenched and broken. She had begun to rebuild herself piece by piece. "How are you feeling?" Luke asked, his eyes soft with concern. Sophia looked out the window for a moment. The world outside, still covered in the haze of early morning. She felt the weight of her past on her shoulders, but it didn't seem quite so heavy today. She thought about the miles they had traveled, the miles that had taken her away from the life she had left behind, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, the road ahead could offer her a second chance. "I don't know," Sophia replied slowly, her voice quieter now. "I'm not sure where to start. Everything feels like a mess, and I don't know how to fix it." Luke nodded, understanding more than she realized. He had spent most of his life on the road, seeing countless people come and go, but he had always believed that change didn't happen overnight. It came in small moments, in the people you met and the connections you made, in the quiet exchanges that spoke louder than words. "Sometimes," Luke said, "you don't need to have all the answers right away. Sometimes, you just need to take it one step at a time. And that's okay." Sophia let out a breath, her shoulders sagging just a little. She was tired. So tired. But she also knew she couldn't keep running forever. She needed to find a place where she could stop, even if only for a little while, and just breathe. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that maybe there was such a place. As the day wore on, Luke continued to drive, the miles passing quietly beneath them. They didn't speak much, but the silence was different now. It wasn't uncomfortable or awkward. It was the kind of silence that only happens when two people are comfortable just being in each other's company. Sophia had started to rest more easily, her body no longer tense with the weight of her thoughts. She gazed out the window, watching the world move by, the same way she had done so many times before. Only this time she felt like she was actually living in it. Around noon they pulled into a small town, the sign reading Harrisville, as they crossed the city limits. It wasn't much, a few shops, a diner, and a handful of homes dotted along the dusty roads, but it felt like a new beginning. The air was fresher here, free from the weight of city life, and the people seemed friendlier. A place that didn't ask questions or make assumptions, but just let you be. Luke turned to Sophia, his gaze steady but kind. "How about we stop here for a bit? Get something to eat and figure out what's next for you?" She looked at him for a long moment, her mind racing, but she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I think I'd like that." They pulled into a small diner at the edge of town, its neon sign buzzing gently. Inside, the warm smell of coffee and fresh food greeted them, and a few regulars glanced up as they entered. The diner was cozy, nothing fancy, but it had a charm that made Sophia feel a little lighter. She sat down at a booth near the window, her fingers tapping nervously against the table, but Luke didn't seem to notice. He just ordered them both a simple meal, a stack of pancakes and eggs, and the waitress smiled at him as if she'd known him forever. As they ate, Luke kept the conversation light, asking about small things, like where Sophia had grown up or what kind of things she used to enjoy doing. The questions were simple, but they opened the door for Sophia to begin speaking again, to reconnect with a part of herself that had been buried for so long. She found herself telling Luke about her childhood, about the things she had once loved, before everything had fallen apart. And as she spoke, she realized something. She had forgotten how to dream. She had forgotten how to think about the future, to think about what she could do, who she could become. After they finished eating, Luke leaned back in the booth looking at Sophia with a kind smile. "What do you think? You got a plan?" Sophia's mind raced for a moment, but then, unexpectedly, something inside her clicked. "I don't know yet," she said, her voice gaining strength. "But I think I want to start over. I want to find something that makes me feel alive again." Luke nodded, his smile genuine. "Good. That's a good place to start." As they left the diner, Sophia felt a weight lifting from her chest. She wasn't sure where the road ahead would take her, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she could finally start walking it. She didn't have all the answers, but maybe, just maybe, that was okay. The future was a mystery, and she was ready to face it. With every step, she was rebuilding herself, and with every new day, she was learning to believe that her past didn't have to define her. The days stretched on, each one a small victory, a step forward. For Sophia, the road to healing was never going to be easy, but with every mile, with every new challenge, she found a little more of herself again. She was slowly shedding the layers of doubt, shame, and fear that had clung to her for so long. And while the scars remained, deep ones she would never forget, they didn't have the same power over her anymore. The road ahead, though, was still full of questions. There were still moments when she would look at herself in the mirror and wonder if she was truly capable of all the things she hoped to achieve. But then she would think of Luke, of the quiet support he had offered her, and she would push those doubts aside. Luke had given her the courage to believe that she could do anything, if she was willing to try. It had been a week since they stopped in Harrisville. Sophia had found a small apartment above a local bakery. The place was humble, but it was hers, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was standing on solid ground. She had found a part-time job at a nearby cafe, washing dishes and helping out with the occasional waitressing shift. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough to keep her going. That morning after a late shift, Sophia stood in her tiny kitchen, the smell of coffee drifting through the air as she stared at the bill on the table. It was just a simple utility bill, something that would have seemed insignificant before. But now, looking at it, she realized something. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. She was building a life brick by brick, and for the first time, she wasn't just trying to make it through the day. She was planning for tomorrow. Her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting her thoughts. She picked it up and saw a message from Luke. They had kept in touch over the past week, sharing stories about their days and offering each other support. He had been a constant reminder that kindness was still alive in the world. Luke. "Hey, Sophia. Just checking in. How's everything going?" Sophia smiled at the message. She hadn't expected anything grand, but hearing from him always made her feel like she wasn't alone in this new chapter. She typed back quickly. "Sophia. It's going well. Got the apartment all set up. Working at the cafe. Slowly but surely, things are falling into place." A few moments later, Luke replied, "Luke. That's awesome. I knew you'd get there. Just remember, you're stronger than you think. And don't be afraid to take a leap when the time feels right." Sophia stared at the message for a moment. She had spent so much time looking back, running from the life that had broken her, that she had forgotten the one thing that mattered most. She had the power to shape her future. She wasn't broken. She was in the process of being made whole again, and with every decision, every action, she was taking that power back. Later that afternoon, Sophia sat on her couch looking through job listings on her phone. She had found herself daydreaming about something more, something bigger. She wanted to go back to school. She wanted to help others, to make sure no one ever felt the way she had felt when she was abandoned, lost, and invisible. There was a spark inside her, now a new sense of purpose that had been kindled by the kindness of a stranger. After she finished scanning the listings, she made up her mind. She picked up the phone and dialed the number she had found for a local community college. She felt her heart race as the phone rang, It wasn't fear, though. It was excitement. Sophia was making a decision that would change everything. Hello, this is Grace Miller from Harrisville Community College. How can I help you? Sophia took a deep breath. Hi, my name is Sophia Jones, and I'm interested in enrolling. I want to get my GED and eventually study social work. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Grace spoke again. That's wonderful, Sophia. We have a program starting next semester. I'd be happy to get you more information and help you through the enrollment process. As Sophia listened to the details, a sense of peace washed over her. This was it. This was the first step towards something new, towards something that wasn't defined by her past but by the person she was becoming. A few days later, Sophia found herself standing in front of the community college's main building. The campus was small, but it felt like a world of possibilities. She had an appointment to meet with the admissions counselor, and her nerves were buzzing with anticipation. This was her moment, the chance to take control of her life, to give herself the future she had once thought was beyond her reach. As she entered the building and took a seat in the waiting area, she couldn't help but remember the first time she had stood by the side of that highway, lost and broken. That day, she had thought the road ahead was closed to her. But now, as she sat there, she realized how far she had come. She was no longer defined by the failures of her past. She was starting fresh. Sophia Jones? A voice called from the door. She looked up and saw a friendly-looking woman with a warm smile. That's me, Sophia replied, standing up quickly. The woman led her into an office, and the conversation turned to the details of the enrollment process. Sophia felt a weight lifting off her shoulders as she answered the questions, her voice steadier with each response. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was in control of her life. As the meeting wrapped up, the counselor smiled at her. You're all set, Sophia. Welcome to Harrisville Community College. We're excited to have you here. Sophia left the office feeling like she was walking on air. She had done it. She had taken the first step toward a future that was entirely hers. There were still challenges ahead, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of them. She was ready. Later that night, as she sat at the small desk in her apartment, Sophia sent Luke a message telling him what had happened. She didn't expect anything grand in return, but she wanted him to know that his belief in her had sparked something in her that she never thought was possible. Sophia, I did it, Luke. I enrolled. I'm going back to school. A few moments later, his reply came through. Luke, I knew you would. I'm so proud of you, Sophia. This is just the beginning. As Sophia put her phone down, she smiled. The weight of her past was still there, but it no longer defined her. She was creating a new story, and this time it was a story filled with hope, purpose, and the belief that anything was possible.